Aldrin, of course, does join us live from Cape Town to reflect on that budget speech yesterday. Aldrin, seemingly agreed to by a lot of the members of the GNU, perhaps some opposition parties not necessarily agreeing to it.
Yeah, certainly, including the MK party as well as the EFF. In the statement that they actually issued, they mentioned in the rejection of the budget that the absence of President Cyril Ramaphosa as well as the Deputy President of the country, Paul Mashatile, is an indication of how disconnected the executive has become from the economic realities facing the poor and the working class. And of course, the President wasn't in the country because he was at that meeting with President Donald Trump in the United States, and Deputy President Paul Mashatile was in Paris, also on a working visit. And the minister starting off his speech is saying that there was a debate around whether or not you postpone Budget 3.0 or whether you postpone that trip that the president has undertaken with the delegation to Washington, D.C., and the decision was taken that actually both should go ahead. And the president would be absent from the budget speech that was delivered yesterday because of the importance of it and also that looming deadline. The minister stressing that the budget must be passed, and also you have the appropriations bill that must also be passed by the NCOP by the 30th of July, which is the deadline. If it is not passed, that would mean that the departments will only have access to around 10% of their budget. And he stresses again, says that if you look at their wage bill, no department has a wage bill that is around 10%. So we have to make sure that this budget is passed and also the appropriation bill is passed by the NCOP by the 30th of July. And also looking at the government expenditure, which is the debt to GDP ratio, which is the highest since 1994. It now increases and will stabilize at around 77.4% of GDP, which is a 1.2% increase from March. And interesting as well is while we know that there will not be a VAT increase because there was no political support for it. But in turn, what we are getting is a fuel levy increase, the first time since the past 3 years. And the fuel levy will be increasing on the 4th of June. So in the next two weeks, we will see a fuel price increase, 16% per litre of petrol and 15% per litre of diesel. But listen to what the alliance partners of the ANC, this is now COSATU as well as the SACP, had to say on their reflection of the budget that was delivered by Enoch Godongwana. Well, we've heard from political parties and what their take is on the speech that has been delivered by the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana. But let's listen to what the tripartite alliance members have to say about the speech that has been delivered. I'm going to start off my conversation with Dr. Alex Mashilo. He is with the South African Communist Party. Very good afternoon to you. Your takeaway from Budget 3.0 and whether or not it is pro-poor, considering once again that you also have this fuel levy increase that is going to kick in on the 4th of, is it 4th of June? Yes, it's the 4th of June.
The fuel levy increase is going to impact on the consumers in the following way. We know that the taxi industry, the bus industry, and the general transport sector industries, whether you are moving people or you are moving goods, they wouldn't pay that money. That money will be passed over to the commuters to pay. It will be passed over to those who will be buying products, whether these products are food or clothes or whatever household products. That's how that money is going to be passed over to the consumers. That is not going to reduce the cost of living. Unfortunately, it is going to increase the cost of living because consumers will now have to pay more.
Do you think that what the minister has delivered does speak to those issues that you are highlighting?
Look, it's a mixed bag. There's some things which we campaigned for, like number one, rejecting the VAT hike, that's positive. Some allocations to begin to rebuild frontline public services like education, dealing with the school infrastructure backlog, hiring additional teachers, health, hiring doctors and nurses, refurbishing our clinics or hospitals, additional 4,000 police officers. So those are good things to rebuild public service. Not enough, but a start. There's good allocations to infrastructure, about R1 trillion over the next 3 years, especially for electricity, for roads, for rail, for ports, which is going to help unlock the economy, help to create jobs in the construction sector, but we need to make sure the money is spent and spent well, because often you find municipalities return the money unspent. We're really pleased that they've given 7.5 billion rand for the South African Revenue Service and a clear target to SARS to improve tax compliance by at least 35, 60 billion rand a year, because for us that is a critical revenue option. Don't do a VAT hike. Give SARS the resource it needs to deal with tax evasion. That's going to bring the money the state needs to rebuild the state. There's good allocation for social grants. There's double inflation. We're seeing an increase in public employment programs. It's about 31 billion rand. So a lot of good things which we have been pushing for.
Thank you so much for your time. Matthew Parks is the parliamentary coordinator for COSATU, and interesting him speaking there about what the minister had to say about PRASA. And you'd remember that one of the policy reviews or adjustments that the Democratic Alliance has been pushing for is a devolution of power when it comes to the operations of PRASA, that they want it to be devolution to the provinces, so that the provinces are also in charge of the passenger railway service of the country. There's no announcement of that effect, but maybe that conversation will be continuing behind closed doors.
All right, Aldrin, allow me to get into this, because it's actually fascinating that there's so many parliamentarians, so many people in and around this that are seemingly okay with this. Just help me understand this a little bit. The initial 2 percentage point increase in VAT was meant to bring in an additional 60 billion rand in revenue for the government. That was, of course, scrapped. The 0.5 percentage point VAT increase was meant to bring in 28 billion rand in this fiscus, in this financial year then. So those were both scrapped because they're additional levies on people. Then the fuel levy itself is meant to bring in between 20 and 50 billion rand, and some would say impacts even more people, because while it may just go to motorists at the beginning, the feed-off is that public transport costs more. If public transport costs more, including driving food around, which means that your price of goods costs more, and it's not just the zero-rated stuff, but all food stuff then ultimately gets higher. It just surprises me that perhaps we didn't look at this correctly, and instead they've substituted the VAT increase for a fuel levy increase. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and that's the argument that has been made by various other political parties as well, the ones that are not part of the government of national unity, and saying that essentially what has happened here is that because of that VAT that has fallen away, and the thing about the VAT is also that it doesn't have the political support, and you can understand the impact of a VAT increase and why it doesn't have the political support. We know, at least with the fuel levy, we every year see an adjustment. But over the past 3 years, we haven't seen that adjustment. Treasury has also come out to say that the reason that the fuel levy is also increasing is because they're adjusting it to inflation. So you have political parties that are saying that essentially what government is trying to do here is to plug that hole that has been left open by that 0.5% VAT increase, which has been scrapped over the medium-term period as well. But here's an interesting bit as well that for me is very, very important. And I spoke to I think it was BOSA, yes, I spoke to BOSA's leader, Musi Mamani, around this. The 2026 budget will therefore need to propose new tax measures aimed at raising 20 billion rand. So it almost seems that what has happened here is that we have kicked the can down the road, that while in this financial year we are not seeing any tax increases, the minister stresses that the 2026 budget will therefore need to propose new tax measures, which means that come 2026 and the budget of 2026, we could see a tax increase has been announced by the minister. Another important thing that I just quickly want to bring into this conversation as well, Arabile, is when the VAT did not increase, what was the reason behind the VAT not increasing? Do we not bring it down to that court challenge that was brought by the Democratic Alliance as well as the EFF, and that out-of-court settlement? Not necessarily that it was members of the government of national unity that had come together, had the deliberations, and decided not to increase the VAT. Because even in the paper that the minister filed before the court, he had come out in support of the VAT increase. Yesterday, speaking to Ethel Trollip from Action SA, and they're saying that, listen, they don't have any confidence in the Minister of Finance, because essentially what he did was he lied to them when he said that they will try and find an alternative form of revenue outside of that 0.5% VAT increase.
Yeah, Aldrin, look, we're going to cross to you as well a few times then this morning. Of course, still more inclusive breakfasts and conversations actually happening around the budget.